Have you ever felt like you're just losing a battle inside your own mind? You set these great goals to be a better person, a better believer, more patient, more focused, but then bam, a single comment from someone triggers this massive wave of anger that you just can't control. Or you take one quick scroll through social media and suddenly you're left feeling bitter, envious, and just kind of hollow. Honestly, it feels like someone else has the remote control to your emotions. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to look at exactly why we experience this overwhelming emotional chaos, and more importantly, how we can actually stop it.
So who actually holds that remote control? I mean, you'd probably say, well, I do. But the truth is, someone else really does. When you just snap in anger or sink into deep jealousy, an unseen enemy has literally taken over. See, we are constantly leaving these secret, completely unguarded gates wide open for destructive forces to just walk right in and take over the show. Okay, let's dive into this blueprint so we can finally learn how to lock those gates forever.
To really understand this battlefield, we're drawing directly from an incredible classical work by the 13th century scholar Imam Ibn Qudamah al-Maqdisi in his text called Discipline, The Path to Spiritual Growth. And what's absolutely fascinating here is that even though this book was written centuries ago, it reveals a shocking reality that is perfectly applicable to our lives today. Your heart? It's not just a biological organ. It is a grand fortress. And right now, whether you realize it or not, that fortress is under siege.
Now, to truly grasp the stakes of this battle, you've got to understand the prize. The text tells us that the heart, the qalb, is the absolute most honored part of a person. Think of it as the king of your physical reality. If the heart has knowledge of its creator and works for him, well, all the other limbs, your hands, your eyes, your tongue, they simply follow and serve like obedient soldiers. If the king is strong, the fortress holds. But if the king falls, the whole shebang goes down with it.
Because of this, there is a constant, literal war happening inside you. It's an active tug-of-war between the armies of the angels, who are pulling you toward discipline, and the forces of the devil, Satan, who acts like this persistent enemy trying to possess your fortress and gain total control of your life. On one side, you have a heart filled with piety, purified by discipline, and on the exact opposite side, a heart forsaken, burdened by desire, and completely corrupted. This battle just keeps raging on until the heart settles firmly on one side or the other.
But here is the crucial point that almost everyone misses. The enemy doesn't bring a giant battering ram to break down your front door. He just doesn't need to. Instead, he sneaks right in through the back. The text outlines 10 secret gates to this fortress, and these aren't grand, dramatic sins. They're mundane, everyday flaws and characteristics that we leave entirely unguarded. And hey, you cannot guard a gate if you don't even know it exists, right? So let's expose them.
Gate number 1 is envy and greed. The text actually calls this a great door. Whenever you become greedy for anything, status, money, attention, that greed literally makes you blind and deaf. It just covers up the internal light of your insight, and the enemy waltzes right in through the dark. The second gate is anger, which is like a fire that totally clouds the brain. Gate 3 is hard-heartedness. And the fourth one? Wow, this is especially relevant today. The love of adornment. This isn't just about keeping things neat, it's modern consumerism. It's dedicating your whole life to decorating your home, your clothes, your furnishings, while leaving your spiritual fortress totally unattended.
Okay, actually, let's just pause here for a second. I want to highlight a really chilling report from the text regarding that third gate, hard-heartedness. It quotes the devil saying, "If the servant is hard-hearted, we will toy with him as a child does with a ball." Let that sink in for a moment. Losing your empathy, becoming numb and hardened to the world around you, it doesn't make you tough. It makes you incredibly vulnerable. A heart that no longer feels for others literally turns into a playground for negativity.
Moving on, these next vulnerabilities act almost like Trojan horses. Gate 5 is satiety, or overeating. Gate 6 is covetous desire toward people, which, let's be honest, is basically just people-pleasing. When you desperately want things from others, you start to exaggerate your praise for them. You compromise your own values just to stay in their good graces, and by doing that, you're effectively handing the enemy the keys to your integrity. And Gate 7 is haste. You see, demonic attacks don't always start with some huge grand temptation. Sometimes they start with eating a bit too much at dinner or caring way too much about what your coworkers think.
Let's zoom in on Gate 7 for just a moment. The prophet, peace be upon him, gave a clear warning that haste is from Shaytan. Just think about your daily routine. Rushing through the morning commute, rushing through your emails, rushing through your prayers. When you abandon steadfastness and constantly live in a state of a frantic hurry, you are leaving a massive gate wide open. You lose your footing, and that gives the enemy the absolute perfect opening to trip you up.
And here are the final 3 gates. Gate 8 is the love of wealth. This is another great door that leads straight to miserliness and the constant fear of poverty. It makes you stop fulfilling the rights of others, turning your own fortress into a prison of greed. Gate 9 is bigoted fanaticism. That's having this blind, intense passion for a specific group without actually acting on your religious obligations yourself. Finally, Gate 10, bad suspicion of Muslims. This is a truly vile entry point, because whoever judges a fellow believer based on suspicion will inevitably grow to hate them and speak unjustly of them. The rule of the fortress is super simple. The believer makes excuses for others, while the hypocrite searches out flaws.
Now, I want to dive a little deeper into what I think is the most surprising vulnerability mentioned in the entire text: satiety, or the desire of the stomach. The author notes that this is one of the greatest destructive vices out there. He even points out that it was the very thing that caused Adam to be expelled from paradise. Physical gluttony directly strengthens your base desires and completely weakens your spiritual impulse for obedience. It sounds almost too simple, but if your stomach is constantly full, your fortress becomes sluggish and undefended. True self-discipline very often has to start right there at the dinner plate.
So how do we fix this one? The source provides the prophetic rule of fractions, and it is beautifully simple: 1/3. When you eat, you should allocate 1/3 of your stomach for food, 1/3 for drink, and leave 1/3 for air. Simple as that. This isn't about extreme, punishing starvation. Eating with justice just means stopping while you still have a little bit of an appetite left. This keeps your body healthy, your focus vibrant, and your mind crystal clear to stand guard.
Now, let's consider another incredibly dangerous gate: anger. The text description of anger is just beautifully visceral. It describes it as this seething feeling of blood boiling in the heart to seek revenge. This fire overcomes the blood, spreading all the way up to the highest parts of the body, making the face and eyes turn completely red. The author compares the angry brain to a dark cave filled with smoke and fire. You can't step forward, you can't hear a word, and you certainly can't see anything clearly.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful realization from the text: anger is the enemy of the intellect. Remember earlier when we talked about the heart being the king and the limbs being the soldiers? Well, your intellect is the specific soldier assigned to guard the gate of anger. When you let anger boil over, that soldier becomes weak, confused, and blind. You literally allow the enemy to play with you however he wishes, effectively handing over the keys of your fortress.
So, what does this all mean? How do we fortify all these gates permanently? Well, the ultimate resolution Imam Ibn Qudamah provides is the path of moderation. The cure here isn't extreme asceticism. You don't need to starve yourself or abandon the modern world to go live in a cave somewhere. The cure is mindful self-discipline. It's finding that median path between excess and neglect. It's about maintaining just enough anger to fight off lowly desires and protect what is right, but not so much that you lose your mind. It's about eating enough to be strong, but not so much that you become lazy.
We've just toured the 10 secret gates where our emotional remote control gets stolen from us. From the food we put on our plates, to the frantic rush of our daily routines, to the grudges we hold against other people. The enemy is constantly, always looking for the path of least resistance into your heart. So I'm going to leave you with this question to really think about today. Which gate of your fortress is standing wide open right now? And what are you going to do today to lock it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.